I really hope that people watching this and people who are going to submit to this prize give themselves the permission to just go for it and break the rules, ignore the boundaries, show us something really surprising, and we are giving you permission to do so.
Yes, love it. Welcome to Wild Muse. In celebration of our Nature Writing Prize, my guest today is Sarah Williams, who's going to be helping judge the prize this year. Sarah is a literary agent. She actually began her publishing career in publicity and then in editorial in the world of Canadian publishing before becoming an agent in 2010 when she was hired by Ed Victor, and then she moved to the UK. She's now a director of the Sophie Hicks agency, and she represents a wide range of authors in both fiction and non-fiction. You'll find links to the competition, and you'll also find information on where you can reach out to Sarah in the description below. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's lovely to have you here. I would really like to start with setting some kind of definition, although for those people watching, I also want to say that when we define nature writing, it doesn't mean that it has to be just this one thing, but just to get a sense of like what your definition for nature writing might be, Sarah.
Sure. I mean, gosh, I think for me, nature writing is just the philosophy that there's a very important place for nature in our lives, and that it has the ability to transform us. I think sometimes people look at nature writing and think I need to be out in a forest, or I need to be trekking along a beach and writing about something that's quite obvious about the outdoors. And I don't feel like it's that. It can be anything that's an observation of the natural world around us. And I think sometimes people are quite shocked when I say, that can even include an urban landscape. A lot of us do live in cities. There are parts of a city that are natural bodies of water, ridges of trees, interesting construction of buildings. I think any piece of writing that examines the relationship between people and place and how they intersect, I would consider nature writing.
Oh, I love that this is broad, but also got like some specific points. I loved what you said about observing that importance of nature in our lives, and that it can be something really small as opposed to like this huge walk along the beach, but also something that can be experienced in a city as well. That feels super inclusive.
Good.
Yeah, I think for me, I was often put off by what I thought nature writing was, and it's only in writing about nature that I've come to have lots of definitions of my own as well. I think something for me is when I'm reading nature writing, and sometimes I can be reading nature writing and I feel that it makes me put my editorial hat on. And when I'm reading something and I'm just enjoying it, that also really signifies to me that it's doing something special. So I'd be really curious to hear from you, Sarah, like what kind of nature writing has you put your agent or your editor's hat aside and just be like, I'm enjoying this, if that does happen?
Yeah, I think anything that's a very, very strong voice tends to pull me into a narrative. And I don't mean that it has to be something that's even that confident. I think people sometimes mistake a strong voice for something that's confident. I think it's something that reflects your personality so that I feel I'm with you as the reader being pulled along into your story. And, nature doesn't need to be instructive, but I think nature writing does need to teach us something new. And if that's as simple as a tree in your backyard that I get to know on a very intimate level, I'm going to be enjoying that hugely.
Thank you for making that distinction between confidence and strong voice, because I think that's not something that I've heard someone say before. And I think it gives people permission, because I think sometimes there's a sense of, to have a great writing voice, like it has to be accomplished and confident and intelligent. But what I'm hearing from you, it's like, actually, it just has to be you.
Exactly. I work with a really amazing writer called Claire Nelson, and she wrote a wonderful memoir called Things I Learned from Falling, which was about her experience in Joshua Tree National Park a few years ago. And she was hiking and did that thing you're never supposed to do, which is go out on your own and not tell anyone where you're going. And she was scrambling across some boulders and fell. And she fell quite a significant distance, and she shattered her pelvis. And she lay in the desert, realizing that she had somehow hiked off the trail several hours earlier. So no one was going to come across her. No one knew where she was. She had no signal on her mobile phone. And she lay in the desert for 4 days and 4 nights. Obviously, she was rescued because she wrote this book. But it's, and I hope Claire will forgive me for saying so, but it's the most unconfident voice you're going to hear in a book. She was very frightened and felt very small. And the book grabbed me, not only because it's an amazing survival story, and I think we all really enjoy those, but she writes in this really brilliant way about what she could see lying on her back in the desert. And it's the same boulder, it's the same sky, and it's what it looks like in the day, how it transforms at night, how the temperature went from 35 degrees in the day to almost freezing in the evening. The animals came across her, and I actually suspended my belief as to what was going to happen. I know she survives because I'm reading her book, but it's such an incredible way to experience something on the page that she pulls off, that those kind of books, they blow my mind. I just, I forget that I'm reading for work, and I can't put them down.
And you can tell, actually, I mean, just the way that you're describing it, I'm already like, how have I not got this book?
Yeah.
But I love that idea that, because she's just lying on her back, the view is going to be the same. And I think that also highlights what nature writing can do, because it's not necessarily just about, I can see this thing right in front of me, but it's like, what journey does that then take me on as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think journey is a really important word in terms of nature writing. I think it's such a brilliant way to observe how we are as human beings. So I'm really interested in what nature writing can tell us about something like grief, for example. And H is for Hawk is a brilliant example of that book, of that. But when something happens to us as human beings that feels unfathomable, and something as enormous as the loss of a spouse, a child, a parent, it shatters our world. And I think there are very few things that can heal that the way that nature can. And I love books that let me into someone else's internal world, but through the lens of nature. And I think what's so amazing about your competition, and I hope people really grasp, is that you don't have to be writing a book length piece of writing to take us in your journey with you. And an essay can give you this incredible snapshot of love, loss, joy, bereavement, any kind of personal transformation, and doing that through observing your surroundings can be incredibly transformational for the reader as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it would be really useful to talk about some skills, because certainly when I was first exploring nature writing, I had a sense of, I don't know the names of plants. Does that make me an imposter as a nature writer? Or, I don't know how this river was formed. I failed geography. But I actually think the skills of a nature writer, and they may not even be writing skills, I think there are skills that maybe people don't realise are so vital for nature writing, and they don't realise, I've got these skills in abundance. Oh my gosh, I could probably be writing some personal stories about nature. So what skills that you have noticed or that you enjoy would you say that nature writers might demonstrate?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, we're very, very lucky at the agency here to represent Tristan Gooley. He's very well known for his latest book is How to Read a Tree, and it's about what the rings of a tree can teach us about how this land was formed 2 centuries earlier, and people love those kind of tips and tricks, but it is absolutely not what nature writing needs to be in any way. I really do believe, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it is just about the skills of observation. And I was, transformed as a younger person by reading Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard, which I know for many people is, their first entry into nature writing. And she was in a part of the world I'd never been to, which was the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. I've never been to that part of the States, but I felt like I knew it intimately. And it's simply her skill of being able to describe what was in front of her, but the further skill of relating it to a slightly bigger picture or a bigger story. So for that book in particular, because she covered an entire year, and it was quite a difficult part of the world in winter, that she was able to take her skill of observation and relate it to the very fine line between beauty and cruelty in the natural world. So I think if any writer is able to look at something in their natural environment and be able to reflect back to something that feels slightly bigger, whether it's something very personal to them or something else in that natural environment, that's this kind of skill I would hone if I was looking to write a longer form book about nature.
Yeah, the observation piece. And actually, I think sounding like a broken record on this is good, because I think it makes that distinction between what are you seeing versus what, and this is what I'm taking, what do you think you sound like? Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is I've worked with so many writers who feel that because they've read really beautiful writing, they need to have beautiful writing, but they're not realizing that what makes writing beautiful is because something's so well observed. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily about the language that you're choosing, it's about describing something so finely and minutely that it just kind of comes alive. So I love that observation is at the top of your list. And actually I'm thinking of Pilgrim at Tinker Creek because it's not just about like, oh, joy, nature is so beautiful. Like what came to mind was this really gruesome moment when she sees some kind of bug suck the innards from a frog.
Yes.
So she's kind of describing the gross side of nature, but even that is sort of sublime in a way, because you're just like, oh, breathtaking, like the detail and the stillness around this image is so powerful. Yeah. So yeah, we don't have to just be describing like beautiful wildflower meadows. It's whatever you're observing, really.
Yes, and I think, it's 2024. There is an importance to our transactional relationship with nature. It has to be what nature provides for us, but also how we can protect it. I'd be really interested to see a personal story about that transactional relationship with nature. I have not seen that done very well, and I think it's important as we move forward, and climate change and polluted rivers, and it's something that's going to be at the forefront for a very, very long time. And I think there's probably a very interesting way to have a personal story reflect what we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, here. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about styles of nature writing, because the prize is asking for all sorts. It's asking for personal stories, it's asking for musings, it's asking for anecdotes, articles, essays. So there might be some kind of argument or a point to make, or perhaps just a story about the journey from a rock to a leaf and how that's opened up someone's world. So when it comes to style, what are some different styles that you've really noticed and thought, I love the way that this project has been put together?
I really would love to be surprised by something. Can you teach me something I didn't know? Are you writing? I'd love to see something written in verse. I wouldn't be opposed to that in any way. An argument is always fantastic. Let me feel very angry about something. Let me feel really moved by something that I shouldn't be moved by. I think anything that can transport a reader somewhere else in whatever way you think you can achieve that would be really exciting to see.
Oh, I love the possibilities that this is opening up, actually. I love that you've thrown verse in there.
I might do that now that
All
I
right,
said,
folks, we're accepting verse. But really, I think the importance about this prize is that anything goes, because it's not about saying, are you a professional writer? What's your CV? Which can put so many people off. It's much more about saying, like you've just articulated, where can you take us with your experience and with your observation of nature? Can you take us somewhere that we just didn't think we'd be nodding our head along to? And that can be really transformative.
Yeah. I'd love to see something about how the natural world speaks to our sense of time as well as our sense of place. We talk about place a lot, but how many times this year already have you said, I can't believe it's already February. I can't believe last year went so quickly. We all have this weird sense of time through the pandemic, that nothing sort of felt like the usual year. And can someone write something about time within the natural world that makes us reflect differently on how we are spending our time, how we are being productive, how we are choosing to rest? What can nature show us to how we can live differently in all those various aspects of our normally very busy lives? I would think that would be very, very cool to see.
Yeah, that would be super cool, because there's something about nature and the relationship with nature that does slow us down. And I think that there's a fine line between that. I used to manage a writing retreat that was set within acres of just forest, and some people would come and just be so bored by that. And then something would shift. It's almost like that observation. They're bored because possibly they're used to observing things that move faster, that are maybe changing colours more, that maybe have dialogue. And then in the way that we have to reconfigure to watch nature, it does have that slowing down effect. So yeah, I'm the same. It would be lovely, because I think sometimes when you read stuff like that as the reader, it calms your nervous system as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Meditation, I'd be very curious to read something that felt like a meditation on the page, really make me slow down, make me feel like I'm observing what you are, make me question what you're seeing, that would be a really interesting way into a nature writing essay for me.
Yeah, I get a sense of that where there's almost the sort of separation between the reader and the writer dissolves. You're no longer a reader reading a writer. You're almost like in the writer's perspective, experiencing it as they are. Yeah, a meditation experienced through reading.
Mm-hmm.
What about this idea of the difference between writing for yourself and writing for an audience in mind? Because I think, well, I'm hoping to reach people with this prize who perhaps have been writing about nature. Maybe they've been posting on Instagram, or maybe they've just been journaling about it. And to sort of invite them to take that step and say, what about if you were to give this an audience? What difference do you think there might be between someone who's maybe at this stage writing for themselves and someone who's got this invitation to write with an audience in mind?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question, and it's something I feel very strongly about, and I talk to my writers about a lot. Writing for yourself can be one of the most freeing, therapeutic practices you can have. And often when my writers are feeling blocked with something, we're working on a proposal, it's not quite feeling right, I say, please forget I'm ever going to read this. And in fact, take it a step further. Don't send me what you are writing. Just, take yourself away. I often tell people to write freehand or write on the Notes app on their phone. I think if you can step away from feeling like there's a structure, what is produced is remarkable. And it's almost like, I'm one of those people that talks to themselves all the time. And my conversations with myself are very, very different to conversations I would have with my partner or a friend or a colleague. And I think sometimes when you then put that parameter around, you lose a little bit of the authenticity of what you're saying. But there is a way to take what you're writing for yourself and look at it and think, is someone interested in this? And the answer is always going to be yes, because it does suddenly have an authenticity that if you're writing for an audience in mind, you can lose. And I think it's as simple as often a quick edit. And the edit should encompass something that's really important, regardless of the length of a piece of writing, which is, what is my central story? What is my narrative arc? And if you take the thing you've been writing for yourself and you think about the broader story, a little bit of, zhuzhing here and there, you would probably have quite a spectacular piece of writing.
Yeah, this is so beautiful. I love the moment where you said you take that and you ask, would this be interesting to somebody else? And because it's got that authenticity, the answer is yes. I mean, it's something, isn't it? As soon as we read something that has come from the heart, that isn't trying to be anything other than what it is, it's just instantly compelling.
Mm-hmm. I mean, think about, everyone's going to have it on their phone somewhere, a photo you have taken outside. A sunset, a rainbow, an interesting tree. You've taken that photo because you want to be reminded of it for yourself, or you want to share it with someone else. And I think there's always a hesitation of, people aren't going to be interested in what I have to say. I bet they're going to be. I bet they are. And I really hope with your competition that people are not frightened to put themselves out there and share their work. And it's a really powerful thing to be able to share your experience with someone else. And I hope we find something really great that way.
Yeah. That example of the photo on the phone is great, because it almost made me think that could even be the inspiration for the essay. You know, I think for some people who are like, I don't have access to nature, or like the last time I was in nature was 3 years ago. And it kind of comes back to this, like, what is nature writing? Why isn't it looking at some random photo on your phone and crafting an entire essay from that one image? So yeah, thanks for bringing that in.
I really agree with that. You know, it's I really don't think nature and nature writing needs to be reserved for somebody who can afford to get on a plane and fly somewhere to experience something else. That's great. Holidays are fantastic, but you know, it's all around us. You just have to look for it, even in a city as big as London.
Yeah, yeah. And also that point you made about the zhuzhing, or the, you know, finding the narrative arc. Sometimes, and I find this when I'm writing my Substack, for example, I'll be writing about an experience in nature, not knowing, you know, what the punchline is or what the thread is. And as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's emerging.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I have a sense of, okay, now I know what the piece is about. And then, of course, I go back and like, now I know what the piece is about. How might I open it differently, or how might I highlight different aspects? So I think I just wanted to add that in, because it's okay to have a few drafts before you even know what the heck it is you're trying to tell.
Oh, for sure. I would expect that you've written something that doesn't feel quite right, and then you realize 3 weeks later, actually, this image has never left me. I must have a different entry point to it. And you go back and you redraft, and every writer goes through that process.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think it would be nice to talk about breaking the rules. Obviously, with the prize, we've got some guidelines that we don't want you to break, such as the word count, for example, and really the theme as well, the theme of nature's healing, nature's wisdom. But there, of course, are some rules that we're happy for you to break. So how might you talk about that to someone who's like, what do you mean break the rules? I don't understand what that is. How would I go about that?
I mean, this is probably not the answer you want, but I just feel like there aren't really any rules that can't be broken. You know, people always ask me, you know, at its core, what is nature writing? And I think nature is in itself a surprise and magical, and I think you can break a rule by really surprising the reader somehow. Are you showing us something in a completely different way? Are you challenging us with something that we think is not right or not correct? Anything like that, in terms of rule breaking, would be very cool to see.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I so agree with you in terms of, you know, what are the rules in the first place? Like who made them? Who says there are any? I feel like, having listened to your answer, it's more just an invitation to really just extend your thinking, like out of that box to what you can create. And actually, I was reminded of a piece of writing I did, which described a vision quest I went on, which is part of my shamanic training, where we spend a prolonged time in nature, having fasted, and we go there to receive guidance. And so I'd written this piece about the vision quest, and the feedback was, oh, I think you need to mention early on that you're on some kind of plant medicine. And my response was, I'm not. So I think that what comes to me from that is a sense, you know, for me as a judge, if I'm reading something almost like, is this fiction? Like, you know, did this happen? I think that would be exciting, sort of like blurring that boundary. A bit like the person who read mine being like, how is she seeing this if she's not on some kind of plant medicine? And is it real or isn't it real? And that could be interesting.
Very much so. Yeah, I would say there are no boundaries in terms of nature writing, and you can find a way in to anything you want to talk about in terms of the natural world. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, as as small as a whole essay about the veins on a leaf to talking about an entire park or a coastline or your personal journey through something that's happened to you, through, visiting a Hackney City farm, anything like that I would find really interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to read an essay on the veins of a leaf. I'd be like, wow, where could they? It makes me think of some writing workshops where you're given quite a confined form within which to write, but in that confinement, it can be incredibly liberating at the same time.
Yes, detail is very, very good. I'm the kind of person that the more detail, the better. I like to feel like I'm completely immersed in whatever you're telling me.
Beautiful. Okay, so there are no rules other than the
Yeah.
word count. We definitely need you to stick to the word count. Oh gosh, it's making me think of that. You know that urban myth of the philosophy essay question in an exam, which is what is courage? Have you heard that? Do you know that?
No.
Oh, so this urban myth in a university final philosophy exam. The student had the question, "What is courage?" And their answer was, "This is."
Okay. Love
So
that.
I'm almost like, the word counts 2,000, but there's no minimum either.
Yes. Gosh, they'd have to be very interesting words.
I mean, maybe more than two, but I'm like, ooh, what if it, just a very rich paragraph could be an interesting one to read.
Yeah. And you touched on that a little bit earlier too, when you said maybe there's an amazing Instagram caption that you have read or that you like writing. Instagram's amazing for that, to have an image, the description underneath, what it means. And I think people don't understand that they're actually already, immersed themselves in the world of nature writing. They just don't know they're doing it.
Thank you for saying that, because that's been one of the things that's inspired me to create this prize. I'm like, there are so many people out there who are writing about nature in a way, and I just don't think that they are really giving themselves credit for how beautifully they're doing it, and they're certainly not giving themselves credit that they're a writer. So this is really about recognizing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it might be quite nice to also touch on, I mean, you've mentioned it here and there as we've been talking, but let's sort of create a specific spot for it where someone might consider what they're trying to achieve. And I think I want to preface this by saying you don't need to be aware of this in the first draft. Like, it's not that you need to, but at some point be thinking, oh, I've written this piece. I wonder what it's trying to achieve.
Sure. I mean, I hesitate to say that nature writing, especially in an essay form, needs to teach us something, but there is an element of that to consider. I would want to finish reading an essay by feeling I had experienced something I hadn't before. Have I been moved by this piece of writing in an unexpected way? Have I been transported somewhere I've never been before, but I now really long to visit? And the thing that I think someone would be brilliant to achieve is, do I feel like I have been witness to someone else's experience in a really important way?
Yeah. I love that. The idea that it could inspire you to want to go somewhere, but also just having witnessed their experience can be the journey. It's making me think of something that Jeff Dyer said about Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, where he was like, it's not the kind of travel writing that makes you think I have to go to this place.
No. Yeah.
It's the kind of writing that gives you a sense of having been there, but gives you a sense of, I now want to look at the world in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've been talking about the prize. You know, it's been hovering in the background. We know that you're the judge, so we have a sense of some of the things that you're going to be looking for, which is really, really helpful, Sarah. Really, really helpful. I would also love to touch on just panning out a little bit, because obviously if someone writes a knockout anecdote or a knockout piece of verse or a beautiful essay and you decide this is first place, I suspect that you might have an interest in wanting to see more from that writer. So I'm curious what you might say to someone who's like, okay, well, I've been writing about nature, I've got some essays, but what about putting a proposal together? What about something larger? So what advice would you give to someone who might be putting their writing together into a proposal for a nature writing book?
Sure, and this is something that happens all the time. And I think it comes down to something very basic, which is it doesn't really matter what kind of book it is, whether it's nature writing or not. But I think it's especially important in the world of natural environment writing. What is your central story? You're going to need a strong narrative arc that compels the reader to keep turning the pages. Is there something that you are trying to work through? Is the story something specific about the four seasons where you live? Is there something mysterious about your surroundings that you're desperate to unlock and solve? There does need to be, when it comes to a book, a framework that you're reading within. Otherwise, it just feels a bit too haphazard. And that might sound slightly unfair, but if you think about how many books are published a year and how much shelf space there is in Waterstones, there's got to be something when it comes to a full-length book that a writer would work up from a proposal that deserves that shelf space.
So the story, the arc. I'm also curious as to the question which often comes for book proposals, which is, who is this book for? I was having a recent discussion with another writer whose memoir is coming out in July, and it was very clear that when she was writing the book, she had no idea who the book was for. And sometimes I think it can be really hard when you've got an idea for something to know who the book is for. So when people ask in a proposal, we want to know who the book is for, what sort of things do you see that, or what would you be expecting to see? Like how much detail, how much awareness of who the book is for? Enough
that you're going to be able to ask central questions that the book is going to address. So I'm working on something right now that is in the world of nature writing, and this is a woman who is going on a very long walk through the natural world, and the book is not just about what she's seeing as she's trekking a shoreline. That her central question is, how do we define home? How do we feel we move from adolescence into adulthood? And these things feel like maybe completely unrelated to her journey, but they're not. And I think you need to be able to ask these questions of your own work and feel confident that you're writing for an audience who also has the same perplexing questions.
I love that. So it isn't so much as who I'm writing for, but who else has these questions.
Exactly.
I love that. And let's end, Sarah, with someone who's been watching this and they're like, do you know what? I've got stuff on my notes. I've got stuff on my Instagram page. Like I want to be writing more. I want to be sharing more. So if someone were like, okay, I'm going to start sharing through a blog, or in my case, a Substack page, what things might they want to consider if they want to be regularly sharing their work?
In terms of where to share it, or in terms of the content?
I think more in terms of the content, perhaps more in terms of you're going to need to share more than just 3 posts before you go viral and become a best-selling writer.
I think it would be good to get into the practice of just regular content. And that can open up a world that you maybe don't know is there. It could be you are walking the same street every day and you choose to look at something new. It could be you are walking in a park and you're walking at a different time of day and how different it feels. I think if you're going to move from the notes app from your phone onto something that you're going to have a regular audience for, you need to take us entirely into your world, show us something new, and show us regularly so that we feel we're, walking alongside with you as you're on your own journey.
Lovely. And there's also a sense of, I don't know if premise is the right word, but the way that you were saying, oh, okay, this blog is about, I'm walking the same street, but what things am I going to notice differently? Or I'm in the same park, but different times of day. There's almost like a sense of, and it's going to sound weird, like I know what I'm going to get, but also at the same time, you don't know what you're going to get. You could sort of, there's a safety in like, I know what I'm going to get, but also there's maybe a promise that there's always going to be a surprise or something new to see.
Exactly. And think about the kind of books that you love to read. And I bet that, many people watching this will love a certain genre of book, and they love it because they do know a little bit what they're going to get. It's comfortable, it's comforting, but then there's always something that surprises. And I think, moving into nature writing, it's exactly the same thing.
That's lovely to give people the permission to actually include some of their favorite genres that they might not necessarily associate with nature writing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I certainly know with my own, I've got a real love for magical realism, and I have a love for fiction, for storytelling. So even though I'm writing in a non-fiction genre, I'm like, where's the story in this? Where's the magic in this? So yeah, I feel like that's a final call to say, don't be afraid to bring in some other favorite genres into this. Like, I'd love to at some point be wondering, is this science fiction or is this non-fiction?
I mean, nature, I always say, it's surprising, it's confident, and it is utterly magical. And if you can make me feel the same from your essay, I'd be thrilled.
Beautiful. Sarah, I always end these interviews by asking if there's anything that I haven't asked. I mean, you've just literally dropped knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. I sort of feel like there might not be anything else that you think I haven't asked, but it's a promise that I make just in case there's something that you're like, oh, I didn't get to say that, or she didn't ask me about that.
I don't think so, but if I may just say one last thing, because I'd like to just continue what you've just said, which is, I really hope that people watching this and people who are going to submit to this prize give themselves the permission to just go for it and break the rules, ignore the boundaries, show us something really surprising, and we are giving you permission to do so.
Yes, love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.